The emergency alarm screamed through the command center of the Cathari homeworld. Ambassador Zeph High's 6 arms trembled as she watched the holographic display show another red dot disappearing from the star map. That was Ketha Prime, home to 3 billion souls. Now it was nothing but empty space and floating debris. "How many does that make?" asked her aide, his voice barely above a whisper. 7 worlds in 3 months, Zephi replied, her throat tight with grief. 7 worlds. 7 entire civilizations. Gone. The thing they called the Devourers had appeared from the dark space between galaxies like a plague of metal locusts. Their ships were massive crystalline structures that fed on everything they touched. Planets, moons, asteroids, even stars began to dim when the Devourers came close. They consumed matter and energy, converting it all into more ships, more weapons, more hungry mouths. The Cathari had tried to fight. Their energy shields were the best in the galaxy. Their plasma cannons could punch holes through asteroid belts. But nothing worked. The Devourer ships adapted to every weapon, absorbed every attack. Worse, they learned. Each battle made them stronger while the Cathari grew weaker. "Ambassador," called her communications officer from across the room, "the Council of Hegemony has responded to our request." Zephi felt a spark of hope. The Hegemony controlled half the known galaxy. Their fleets numbered in the tens of thousands. Surely they would help. "Put it through," she said. The hologram flickered to life, showing the proud face of Chancellor Vextar, his scales gleaming under artificial light. "Ambassador Zephi," he began in that cold, formal tone she had grown to hate. "The Hegemony Council has reviewed your request for military assistance. And?" Zephi leaned forward. "We regret to inform you that we cannot spare resources for your situation. Our calculations show that the Devourer threat will burn itself out within 2 galactic rotations. The cost of intervention outweighs the benefits." The transmission ended. Zephi stared at the empty space where the Chancellor's image had been. 2 galactic rotations meant 4 standard years. By then, every Cathari world would be nothing but cosmic dust. "What about the Trade Federation?" her aide asked desperately. The Federation's response came an hour later. "Economic projections indicate minimal impact on trade routes. Acceptable losses within normal parameters." The Stellar Union said their fleets were busy elsewhere. The Crystal Confederacy claimed they had no ships to spare. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found reasons to look the other way while an entire species faced extinction. 3 days later, Zephi stood alone in the communication chamber, preparing to send what might be the last message from her people. She had tried official channels and been ignored. Now she would cast her plea into the void itself, broadcasting on every frequency to every corner of known space. "This is Ambassador Zephi of the Cathari Confederation," she began, her voice steady despite the fear in her hearts. "We are dying. The entities we call the Devourers have consumed 7 of our 12 worlds. Our defenses have failed. Our allies have abandoned us." She paused, watching through the window as refugee ships fled past, packed with civilians trying to reach the outer worlds. Children who would never see their homes again. Elders leaving behind the graves of their ancestors. "We have 47 days before they reach our remaining worlds. We have tried everything we know. Our science, our weapons, our diplomacy, all have failed us. If anyone can hear this message, if anyone in this vast galaxy still believes that some things are worth fighting for, please help us. We don't ask for much. We only ask to live." The transmission went out on every known frequency, carried by quantum relays across thousands of light years. 47 civilizations received the message clearly. 47 civilizations read the data about the Devourers. 47 civilizations made their choice. 46 said no. On a small blue planet in the far rim of the galaxy, Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega picked up the signal at 0347 local time. Technician Rodriguez was half asleep when the computer flagged the transmission as urgent. He rubbed his eyes and read the message twice before hitting the alert button. Within an hour, the message reached Earth Defense Command. Within 6 hours, it sat on the desk of Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen. She read it 3 times, then called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. "The situation is simple," Admiral Chen told the assembled leaders. "An entire species is about to be wiped out. They've asked for help. Everyone else has said no." "What do we know about these Cathari?" asked the European representative. "Peaceful traders and artists. Never been in a war in their recorded history. They build beautiful cities and write poetry about their gardens. And these devourers? Hive mind, adaptive technology. They've never been defeated. Every species that's encountered them has either fled or been consumed. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, the African Union delegate spoke up. What are our chances? Admiral Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Unknown. No one like us has ever tried. No one like us. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by galactic standards. Most species can't even visit our planet without dying from the gravity, the atmosphere, or the bacteria. We're considered primitive barbarians by the galactic community. So why should we get involved? Admiral Chen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Earth below. Blue oceans, white clouds, and 7 billion people who had clawed their way to the top of the food chain on a planet that tried to kill everything that lived on. And because 46 civilizations listened to a cry for help and decided it wasn't their problem, because sometimes the only thing standing between the darkness and the light is someone too stupid to know when they're beaten. The vote was unanimous. 12 hours later, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, watching as Task Force Lazarus assembled in Earth orbit. 200 ships of various sizes, from massive battleships to nimble destroyers. 50,000 crew members, all volunteers. They knew they might not come back. They came anyway. Admiral, called her communications officer. We're receiving a response to our message to the Cathari. The hologram showed Ambassador Zeph High, her face filled with confusion and desperate hope. Admiral Chen, we received your transmission, but our records show that Earth is a death world. Your species is listed as pre-contact primitives. Are you certain you wish to engage the Devourers? Admiral Chen smiled. Ambassador, you asked for help. We're what you got. We'll be there in 18 days. But Admiral, you don't understand. The Devourers have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. They have weapons that can crack planets, shields that absorb any energy attack. Your ships appear to use primitive chemical rockets and metal projectiles. That's right, Admiral Chen nodded. Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need. As Task Force Lazarus jumped to hyperspace, every major power in the galaxy watched and waited. Most expected the human fleet to be destroyed within hours of arriving. The Devourers had never been stopped before, but then no one had ever sent humans to stop them. The journey to the Cathari systems took 18 days through hyperspace. Admiral Chen used every hour to prepare her fleet for what waited ahead. She stood in the briefing room of the ESS Defiance, looking at the faces of her ship commanders. These were people who had volunteered to fly into the unknown to help complete strangers. Let me tell you about Earth, she began, activating the holographic display. The blue marble appeared, spinning slowly. Most species in the galaxy come from garden worlds. Perfect temperature, gentle weather, no dangerous animals. Earth is different. She highlighted various regions. Australia, where half the animals are venomous and the other half are trying to eat you. The Amazon, where the plants try to kill you and the insects carry diseases. Siberia, where the cold can freeze your blood solid. The deep ocean, where creatures live in crushing darkness under pressure that would flatten most alien ships. Commander Martinez raised his hand. Admiral, why are you telling us what we already know? Admiral Chen smiled. Because the galaxy doesn't know. They think we're primitive because we use kinetic weapons and chemical rockets. They think we're stupid because we fight wars instead of talking our way out of everything. They don't understand that we're not primitive. We're optimized. She changed the display to show human anatomy. We come from a world where everything is trying to kill us, so we became very good at not dying. Our bones are dense enough to survive impacts that would shatter other species. Our muscles work in gravity that would crush most aliens flat. Our brains are wired to find patterns, solve problems, and never give up. Captain Santos leaned forward. What does this have to do with the Devourers? Everything, Admiral Chen replied. The Devourers have conquered 43 species. Every one of those species fought the same way. Massive energy weapons, complex shields, perfect formations flying in straight lines, mathematical warfare. She switched to tactical displays showing previous battles. The Devourers adapt to patterns. They learn from each encounter and become immune to whatever destroyed them before. Energy weapons? They develop energy absorption. Kinetic projectiles? They create deflection fields. Plasma cannons? They evolve heat resistance. But we don't fight like that, Commander Liu said, understanding beginning to dawn. Exactly. We improvise, we cheat. We use tactics that make no logical sense. When our ships are damaged, we keep fighting. When we're outnumbered, we get creative. When the plan doesn't work, we make a new plan. Admiral Chen pulled up Earth's military history. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Naval battles in storms, aerial combat in hurricanes, ground warfare in deserts, jungles, Arctic wastelands. We've learned to fight in conditions that would kill most aliens before the battle even started. The room was quiet as the implications sank in. They weren't just a rescue fleet. They were an evolutionary weapon that had been forged in the fires of a death world. There's something else, Admiral Chen continued. Our ships. The display showed cross-sections of human vessels compared to standard galactic designs. The alien ships were elegant, efficient, with smooth energy conduits and perfect symmetry. The human ships looked brutal by comparison, all sharp angles and redundant systems. Galactic ships are built for perfect conditions, she explained. When something goes wrong, they stop working. Our ships are built to take damage and keep fighting. Multiple hulls, backup systems, manual overrides for everything. We designed them expecting things to go wrong. Captain Torres whistled softly. Because on Earth, things always go wrong. Right. And there's one more advantage we have. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. The galaxy thinks logically. They calculate odds, weigh costs and benefits, make rational decisions. That's why 46 civilizations said no to the Cathari. It wasn't logical to help. She gestured to the assembled commanders. How many of you ran calculations before volunteering for this mission? No one raised their hand. How many of you weighed the strategic benefits to Earth? Again, silence. How many of you made a logical decision based on careful analysis? Commander Martinez spoke up. Admiral, we volunteered because people were dying and no one else would help. That's not logical. That's just right. Admiral Chen nodded. And that's exactly what I mean. We don't always make logical decisions. Sometimes we make human ones. The next few days were spent in preparation. The human fleet practiced maneuvers that would seem insane to galactic observers. Ships flying through asteroid fields at full speed. Simulated battles where vessels with massive damage continued to fight. Boarding exercises where Marines practiced fighting in zero gravity with hull breaches. Dr. Williams, the fleet's chief scientist, briefed the crews on what they knew about Devourer technology. They're crystalline entities, possibly silicon-based. Their ships grow rather than being built. They seem to operate as a hive mind with perfect coordination between vessels. Weaknesses? Asked Commander Santos. Unknown. Every species that's fought them has used energy-based attacks. We have no data on how they respond to kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, or boarding actions. Why not? Asked Captain Liu. Dr. Williams looked uncomfortable. Because no one has ever tried. Galactic doctrine considers such tactics primitive and ineffective. But not impossible? No, just no one thought to try. On the 15th day of their journey, they received another message from Ambassador Zephi. Her image appeared in the briefing room and the humans could see the exhaustion in her face. Admiral Chen, the Devourers have taken 3 more worlds. We have less than a week before they reach our core systems. Our remaining fleets are falling back to make a final stand at our homeworld. She paused. I must ask again, are you certain about this? Our best scientists estimate your ships will be destroyed within minutes of engagement. Admiral Chen stood up. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. We come from a planet where the weather tries to kill us, the animals hunt us for sport, and the plants are poisonous. We've been fighting impossible odds for our entire existence. She gestured to the tactical display showing the Devourer fleet. Your scientists are probably right. We probably will be destroyed. But here's the thing about humans, we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. The transmission ended and Admiral Chen turned to her commanders. Any questions? Commander Martinez raised his hand. Just one, Admiral. When do we show these Devourers what a death world can do? Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been hunting on a world where everything was a predator. 3 days, Commander. 3 days and they'll understand why Earth builds warriors instead of poets. As the human fleet continued toward the battle zone, monitoring stations across the galaxy watched their progress. Most observers expected a quick defeat. The Devourers had never been stopped before, but then again they had never met humans before. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cathari system, and Admiral Chen felt her heart sink at what she saw. The tactical display lit up with thousands of red contacts. Devourer ships filled space like a swarm of metal insects, their crystalline hulls catching the light of the dying star. Status report, she called. Ma'am, I'm reading over 8,000 enemy vessels, reported Lieutenant Parker, his voice tight with shock. They range from frigate size to, God almighty, that thing's bigger than a moon. Admiral Chen studied the formation. The Devourers moved with perfect precision, like dancers performing a deadly ballet. No wasted motion, no energy lost to inefficiency. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. What's left of the Cathari fleet? She asked. 43 ships holding position around the fourth planet. They're broadcasting surrender requests. On the screen, Ambassador Zephi appeared. Her image flickered with interference from the massive energy weapons firing in the distance. Admiral Chen, thank the stars you're here. But you must see that resistance is futile. We cannot even damage their ships. What have you tried? Admiral Chen asked. Everything. Plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter torpedoes, gravitational weapons. Nothing works. Their hulls adapt to every attack within minutes. Admiral Chen nodded. Ambassador, I want you to pull your ships back to minimum safe distance. We're going to try something different. Different how? We're going to show them what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have horrified any galactic military academy. No neat lines, no mathematical precision. The ships moved like a pack of wolves, each vessel maintaining just enough distance to avoid collision while staying close enough to support each other. All ships, Admiral Chen broadcast. Remember what we talked about. No energy weapons until I give the word. Kinetics only. And remember, when things go wrong, we adapt. Captain Santos aboard the ESS Vengeance was the first to engage. Her destroyer screamed toward the Devourer formation at maximum acceleration. Her crew pressed into their seats by forces that would have killed most aliens. Target locked, called her weapons officer. Fire everything, Santos commanded. The Vengeance unleashed a storm of metal, railgun slugs moving at significant fractions of light speed, nuclear-tipped missiles with chemical drives, old-fashioned tungsten penetrators fired from magnetic accelerators, weapons that most of the galaxy considered primitive and obsolete. The Devourer ships reacted with mechanical precision, raising energy shields and deploying defensive fields. For a moment it looked like the human attack would fail just like all the others. Then the first railgun slug punched through a Devourer shield like it was tissue paper. The crystalline ship's hull cracked and began to bleed atmosphere. Emergency lights flickered as the vessel tried to compensate for damage it had never experienced before. Direct hit, Santos shouted. The bastard's hurt. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as the human fleet engaged. The Devourer's perfect defenses, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against chunks of metal moving at tremendous speed. But the Devourers learned quickly. Within minutes, magnetic fields appeared around their ships, designed to deflect the human projectiles. They're adapting, reported Commander Liu. My next volley did minimal damage. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Then it's time for Lesson 2. All ships begin evasive maneuvers. Pattern Chaos 7. The human fleet suddenly stopped fighting like a fleet and started fighting like individuals. Ships broke formation and scattered, each vessel choosing its own path through the battle. Some dove toward the enemy at suicidal angles. Others used the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot around obstacles. A few ships actually shut down their engines and drifted, becoming invisible to the Devourer targeting systems. The enemy formation, built for mathematical precision, began to falter. Their hive mind could calculate perfect responses to organized attacks. But chaos was beyond their programming. Captain Torres, commanding the cruiser ESS Relentless, found himself surrounded by 6 Devourer vessels. Standard doctrine would call for him to retreat and regroup. Instead, he did something no galactic commander would consider. Full power to engines, he ordered. We're going to ram that big one, sir? His helmsman asked. You heard me. Sometimes the best way through a problem is straight through it. The Relentless accelerated directly toward the largest Devourer ship, her hull groaning under the strain. The enemy vessels fired everything they had, but Torres had learned something from the previous engagements. He spun his ship like a drill bit, presenting different angles to the enemy weapons and making it impossible for them to achieve a killing hit. At the last second, he fired his main guns point-blank into the Devourer's hull, then reversed engines and used the explosion to boost away from the crippled enemy ship. Torres, that was insane. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comm. Thank you, ma'am. Torres replied cheerfully. Should I do it again? Meanwhile, Commander Martinez was discovering another advantage of human engineering. His ship, the ESS Defiant, had taken massive damage. Half his hull was gone, life support was failing, and most of his weapons were offline. Any galactic ship would have been considered destroyed, but human ships were built by people who expected everything to go wrong. "Emergency power to remaining weapons," Martinez ordered. "Seal off the damaged sections and keep fighting." "Sir, we're venting atmosphere and the hull is cracking." "Then we'll fight in environment suits if we have to." The Devourers had never encountered anything like it. Their perfect calculations couldn't account for ships that continued to fight while falling apart, crews that laughed while dying, or tactics that seemed to have no logic at all. But the humans were taking losses too. The ESS Courage took a direct hit from a Devourer energy weapon and simply vanished in a flash of light. The ESS Freedom lost her engines and drifted helplessly until a Devourer ship consumed her hull. Admiral Chen watched her fleet, dying, and felt the cold rage that had made humans the apex predators of Earth. These crystalline monsters thought they could just take what they wanted, destroy entire civilizations, and no one would stop them. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. "All ships," she broadcast. "Time to show them what we learned from our ancestors. Pattern Berserker." The surviving human ships formed up into a wedge formation and charged straight at the heart of the Devourer fleet. No fancy maneuvers, no tactical cleverness. Just pure, focused aggression backed by the fury of a species that had climbed to the top of a Deathworld's food chain. The Cathari, watching from their safe distance, could hardly believe what they were seeing. "They're not retreating," Ambassador Zephi whispered. "They're outnumbered 100 to 1 and they're attacking." "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "I'm reading massive damage to the human fleet. Why don't they withdraw?" Zephi studied the tactical display, trying to understand these strange creatures who had come to help her people. "I don't think they know how," she said finally. "I don't think withdrawal is in their nature." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer formation was broken and retreating. They had lost over 3,000 ships to the humans' 200, but more importantly, they had lost something else. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers had encountered an enemy they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't adapt to fast enough. As the enemy fleet withdrew to regroup, Admiral Chen looked at what remained of her force. 67 ships, most of them damaged, crewed by people who should have been dead, but were somehow still fighting. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "the Cathari are requesting permission to come aboard." "Granted," Chen replied. "I think it's time they met some real Deathworlders." Ambassador Zephi stepped aboard the ESS Defiance and immediately felt wrong. The gravity was crushing, like walking through thick liquid. The air burned her lungs with its oxygen content. Even the lighting was harsh and bright, designed for creatures with different eyes. But it was the humans themselves that truly shocked her. Admiral Chen stood in the damaged briefing room, her uniform torn and bloodstained, a bandage covering one side of her face. Around her stood the surviving ship commanders, and Zephi could see that every one of them bore the marks of battle. Burns, cuts, exhaustion written in every line of their faces, yet they were smiling. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador," Admiral Chen said. "Sorry about the mess. We've been a bit busy." Zephi looked around the room. Exposed wiring hung from the ceiling. Scorch marks decorated the walls. Through a cracked viewport, she could see space filled with debris from the battle. "Admiral, your casualties," she began. "Were acceptable," Chen replied firmly. "We knew the cost when we came here. The question is, are you ready to fight?" "Fight? But Admiral, we tried to fight. Our weapons are useless against them." Captain Santos stepped forward, her left arm in a sling. "Ambassador, can I ask you something? What did your people do before the Devourers came?" "We were artists, poets, philosophers. We built beautiful cities and created works of art that lasted for millennia. And that's wonderful," Santos said. "But have you ever had to fight for your survival?" Zephi's four eyes blinked in confusion. "Fight? Why would we fight?" "We solved disputes through discussion and compromise." The humans exchanged glances. Commander Martinez spoke up. "Ambassador, with respect, the Devourers don't want to discuss anything. They want to eat your planets. You can't negotiate with something that sees you as food. But what else can we do? Your ships are magnificent warriors, but even you cannot stand against their full fleet." Admiral Chen activated the holographic display. It showed the Devourer forces regrouping at the edge of the system, their numbers still overwhelming despite their losses. "You're right," Chen admitted. In a straight fight, we'll lose. They have too many ships and they're learning from each encounter. By tomorrow, they'll have adapted to our kinetic weapons. Zeph-Hai felt her heart sinking. Then it's hopeless. No, Chen said with that predatory smile. It just means we have to get creative. Over the next several hours, the humans did something that amazed the Cathari. Instead of planning a defensive action or preparing to retreat, they began planning an attack that seemed completely insane. We're going to board their ships, Commander Torres explained, his left eye swollen shut from his earlier ramming attack. Board them? Zeph-Hai gasped. But that's impossible. Their hulls are crystalline. They regenerate damage, and even if you could get inside, the atmosphere is corrosive to most life forms. Most life forms, Captain Santos agreed. But we're from a planet where the rain is acid and the air tries to poison us. Our Marines train in active volcanoes and underwater caves. Corrosive atmosphere is just Tuesday for us. The plan they outlined was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Small teams of humans would use their damaged ships as delivery vehicles, ramming directly into devourer hulls. The Marines would then fight their way to the enemy ship's control centers and plant explosives. The beauty of it, explained Lieutenant Commander Jackson Torres, the fleet's Marine commander, is that they won't expect it. Every species they've fought uses long-range weapons and perfect formations. Nobody's ever just walked up and punched them in the face. Zeph-Hai watched in fascination as the humans prepared for their mission. The Marines tested their equipment in conditions that would kill most galactic species. They practiced fighting in zero gravity with hull breaches, simulated combat in toxic atmospheres, and rehearsed boarding actions while their transport ship was under fire. "Don't you fear death?" she asked Commander Torres as he checked his armor. Torres looked at her with surprise. "Of course we do. Fear keeps you alive, but fear doesn't stop you from doing what needs to be done." "I don't understand. If you're afraid, why not retreat?" "Because people are counting on us," Torres said simply. "You're people. And when someone's counting on us, we don't give up. That's just who we are." The attack began at dawn, ship time. The Devourer fleet had formed a new defensive pattern, designed to counter the human kinetic weapons. Energy shields pulsed in synchronized waves, creating overlapping fields that could deflect projectiles. "Looks like they learned from yesterday," observed Captain Liu. "Good," replied Admiral Chen. "Time to teach them something new." The human fleet charged again, but this time they weren't trying to win a space battle. They were trying to deliver a message, written in explosives and sealed with human determination. Captain Santos piloted her badly damaged destroyer directly at the largest Devourer vessel, her ship groaning and sparking as enemy fire tore through her remaining armor. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, reported her damage control officer. "Emergency bulkheads holding?" "Barely." "Then we keep flying," Santos said grimly. "Marines, prepare for boarding action." The Vengeance slammed into the Devourer ship's hull like a guided missile. The crystalline armor cracked and shattered, creating a breach that the Marine teams could exploit. Before the enemy ship could regenerate its damage, 30 humans in powered armor were inside its hull. What they found inside defied description. The Devourer ship was alive, its corridors pulsing with organic machinery. Crystalline growths lined the walls, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that might have been communication or might have been pain. "This is like fighting inside someone's circulatory system," muttered Sergeant Williams as her team advanced through the narrow passages. "Stay focused," Commander Torres replied over the comm. "Find the central node and plant the charges." The Marines fought their way deeper into the ship, encountering resistance unlike anything in their training. The Devourer's internal defenses weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were extensions of the ship itself, crystalline growths that could reshape themselves into weapons or barriers. But the humans adapted. When the passages became too narrow for their armor, they abandoned it and fought in environment suits. When their energy weapons were absorbed by the crystalline walls, they switched to chemical explosives and old-fashioned bullets. "Contact front," called Corporal Davis. Something big coming down the main corridor. The thing that emerged was nightmare fuel. Part machine, part organic creature, it flowed down the passage like liquid metal given predatory intelligence. Its surface rippled with defensive fields that should have stopped any conventional weapon. Davis did what any human would do when faced with the impossible. He improvised, "Hey, ugly, he shouted, pulling the pin from a white phosphorus grenade. "Chew on this." The explosion filled the corridor with burning chemicals that ate through both metal and flesh. The Devourer construct writhed and collapsed. Its perfect defenses useless against weapons designed for trench warfare on Earth. Across the enemy fleet, similar scenes played out as human marines carved their way through ships that had never been boarded before. They fought in conditions that would have killed any other species, using weapons that galactic civilization had abandoned centuries ago. The Devourers tried to adapt. But how do you adapt to enemies who change their tactics every few minutes? How do you defend against creatures who see every setback as a puzzle to be solved? In the flagship's command center, Commander Torres planted the final explosive charge while his team held off the enemy's last desperate attempt to stop them. "Charges set," he reported. 30 seconds to detonation. "All teams, this is Admiral Chen. You have 10 seconds to get clear." "Negative, Admiral," Torres replied calmly. "We're not going to make it." There was silence on the comm for a moment. Then Admiral Chen's voice tight with emotion. "Understood, Commander. It's been an honor." "Likewise, Admiral. Tell my wife I kept my promise." The explosions tore through the Devourer fleet like a chain reaction. Ships that had survived the firepower of entire civilizations were gutted from within by charges placed by humans who refused to give up. When the smoke cleared, the Devourer fleet was broken. Not destroyed, but hurt in ways they had never experienced before. For the first time in their existence, they faced an enemy that couldn't be calculated, predicted, or adapted to fast enough. As the surviving enemy ships began to retreat, Ambassador Zeph High found herself weeping for the humans who had died to save her people. "Why?" she asked Admiral Chen. "Why would you sacrifice so much for strangers?" Chen looked out at the debris field that contained the remains of heroes whose names would never be forgotten. "Because," she said quietly, "someone had to, and we happened to be here." 3 days after the boarding action, long-range sensors detected the worst possible news. The Devourer fleet was returning, and they had brought reinforcements. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her damaged flagship, watching as the tactical display filled with more red contacts than she had ever seen in one place. "Numbers?" she asked quietly. 12,000 ships, Admiral," Lieutenant Parker reported, his voice barely steady. "They've called in every vessel from their other campaigns." Admiral Chen nodded. It made sense. The humans had hurt them, confused them, shown them something they had never encountered before. The Devourers were bringing everything they had to eliminate this new threat. Status of our fleet? 41 ships still operational. Most are running on emergency power and spare parts. 41 ships against 12,000. Even by human standards, those were impossible odds. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "Ambassador Zeph High is requesting to speak with you." The hologram flickered to life, showing the Cathari ambassador on the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, Zeph High could see the faces of her crew, all looking to their leader for guidance. "Admiral Chen," Zeph High began, "our long-range scans confirm your readings. The enemy has brought their entire force. This is clearly beyond what anyone could expect you to face." Admiral Chen waited. She could guess what was coming next. "We have prepared evacuation ships for your people," the ambassador continued. "Your sacrifice has already saved millions of Cathari lives. There is no shame in withdrawal now." "Ambassador," Chen replied, "how many of your people are still on the remaining worlds?" "Approximately 8 billion across 4 planets. And if we withdraw?" Zeph High's shoulders sagged. "They will all die. The Devourers do not take prisoners." Admiral Chen looked around her bridge. Her crew had been listening to the conversation, and she could see the decision in their faces before any of them spoke. "Admiral," said Captain Santos over the comm, "the Vengeance is held together with prayer and duct tape, but she'll fight." "The Relentless is ready," added Commander Torres. One by one, every surviving ship reported the same thing. They would stay. They would fight. They would probably die, but they would not abandon the Cathari people. Admiral Chen smiled, feeling proud of her species in that moment. "Ambassador, thank you for the offer, but we didn't come this far to run away at the end." "But Admiral, you cannot possibly survive this battle." "You're probably right," Chen admitted. "But here's something about humans that the galaxy needs to understand. We don't fight battles because we think we can win them. We fight them because they need to be fought." The next few hours were spent in frantic preparation. Every ship used the time to make what repairs they could, redistribute ammunition, and say goodbye to loved ones back on Earth. The humans knew they were about to die, but they faced it with the same grim determination that had carried their species from caves to the stars. Dr. Williams, the fleet scientist, made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral," he called excitedly from his laboratory, "I've been analyzing the debris from the destroyed Devourer ships. I think I know why our boarding actions worked so well." "Explain." "Their hive mind isn't just psychological. It's quantum-based, using entangled particles to maintain instantaneous communication across their fleet. But there's a weakness." Chen leaned forward. "What kind of weakness?" "They can't handle true chaos. Their entire system is built on predictable patterns and mathematical precision. When we introduced genuine randomness into their ships, it caused cascade failures in their network." "What does that mean for us?" Dr. Williams grinned, and it was an expression that would have terrified any devourer who understood it. "It means we don't have to destroy their fleet. We just have to break their network." The plan that emerged was insane even by human standards. They would use their remaining ships not as weapons, but as chaos generators. Every vessel would attack differently, using random patterns that couldn't be predicted or countered. "The key," Dr. Williams explained, "is that we can't coordinate our actions. The moment we start working together in a predictable pattern, their hive mind will adapt. We have to fight as individuals, each ship doing whatever seems right at the moment." Admiral Chen broadcast the plan to her fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. No formations, no coordinated attacks, no battle plans. I want every ship to pick targets at random and attack using whatever method seems good at the time. Make it up as you go along." "Admiral," Captain Liu asked, "what if we accidentally hit each other?" "Then we apologize and keep fighting," Chen replied. "The goal isn't to win cleanly. The goal is to create so much chaos that their hive mind breaks down." The Devourer fleet arrived in perfect formation, a mathematical expression of coordinated death. 12,000 ships moving in precise harmony, their weapons charging in synchronized patterns, their strategy calculated to eliminate the human threat efficiently. They had learned from their previous encounters. Energy shields were configured to stop kinetic weapons. Defensive formations were designed to prevent boarding actions. Every lesson from their defeats had been incorporated into their new tactics. What they hadn't expected was what actually happened. The human fleet scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Every ship flew in a different direction at a different speed using different tactics. Captain Santos headed straight for the enemy formation at maximum acceleration. Commander Martinez shut down all his systems and drifted, pretending to be debris. Captain Liu flew in a spiral pattern while firing randomly into space. To an outside observer, it looked like complete madness. The humans appeared to have lost all discipline, all coordination, all sense of military order, and that was exactly the point. The Devourer hive mind tried to calculate responses to the human attacks, but there was nothing to calculate. How do you predict the actions of an enemy who doesn't know what he's going to do next? Captain Torres found himself facing a formation of 50 Devourer ships. Standard tactics called for him to retreat and wait for support. Instead, he did something that made no sense at all. He opened a comm channel and began singing. "Amazing Grace." How sweet the sound, his voice echoed across space. "That saved a wretch like me." The Devourer ships hesitated, their hive mind struggling to process this new form of communication. In that moment of confusion, Torres fired every weapon he had and then rammed the nearest enemy vessel while still singing. Across the battlefield, similar acts of beautiful insanity played out. Commander Davis flew his ship backwards while firing missiles in every direction. Captain Rodriguez used his ship's external lights to flash what appeared to be random signals, but was actually an ancient human Morse code message. "Remember the Alamo." The Devourer formation began to break down. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly couldn't predict where their own allies would be in the next second. Their quantum communication network, designed for mathematical precision, started producing errors when faced with genuine chaos. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold and realized something wonderful. Her fleet was losing in every traditional sense. Ships were being destroyed, weapons were running out of ammunition, and the humans were vastly outnumbered, but they were winning where it mattered. "All ships," she broadcast, "I'm reading quantum cascade failures throughout the enemy fleet. Keep doing whatever you're doing." The end came suddenly. Captain Santos, her ship held together by determination and emergency patches, made one final run at the Devourer command vessel. Her engines were failing, her weapons were empty, and her hull was more whole than metal. As she approached the massive enemy ship, she activated her self-destruct sequence and opened all comm channels. "This is for Earth," she said clearly, "and for people we've never met who deserved better than to die alone." The explosion wasn't just physical. The quantum resonance from her ship's destruction at the exact center of the Devourer formation sent a feedback pulse through their entire network. 12,000 ships, all linked by quantum entanglement, suddenly experienced the same system failure at the same instant. The hive mind shattered like crystal struck by a hammer. Across space, Devourer ships began to drift as their controlling intelligence fragmented into billions of confused fragments. Some vessels fled in random directions, others simply stopped moving. A few began attacking their own allies as their programming broke down completely. When the chaos finally settled, the Devourer threat was over. Not destroyed, but broken beyond repair, their perfect unity had become their fatal weakness when faced with an enemy that embodied chaos. Of the 41 human ships that had entered the battle, only 7 remained. Of the 50,000 humans who had left Earth, fewer than 12,000 survived. As rescue ships from across the galaxy arrived to witness the impossible, Admiral Chen stood on her shattered bridge and looked out at the stars. The Cathari were safe. An entire species would continue to exist because humans had decided that was worth dying for. "Admiral," called Ambassador Zephi over the comm, "how can we ever repay such a debt?" Chen smiled, thinking of all the humans who would never see Earth again. "Just remember us, Ambassador. Remember that when the galaxy needed heroes, they came from a little blue planet where everything tries to kill you.